ominous and spooky. They're all together, ooky, the Addams Family.
Welcome to the Rage Quit Wire. You got Chris and my buddy Pete.
Yep.
And so we're going to be talking about the Morts today. Those creepy Morticians.
The spooky people.
Yep. And so normally Pete books our guests, but this time I've taken it upon myself to get a guest
And
for us.
I have to say, you got a pretty badass guest.
I appreciate that. So he is waiting for us. We're going to pull him onto Skype. And
Who is this we're interviewing?
well, I'll tell you once we get him on.
Okay.
We have a treat today, Pete.
Oh boy.
We do. You usually find all of our guests.
I've been doing that.
Yeah, but I figured I should pull my own weight. So we have a very special guest, Bill Anderson. He is the host of... Co-host.
I would
Okay.
say there's two of them.
Okay. Well, he's the tech side, just like you're the tech side
sure.
for us. Actually, no, you're the other guy.
I'm the other guy.
on Guild Ball tonight, you're the other guy.
So I'm going to say this. So Chris did pull me into Guild Ball. He got me out of War Machine, and I still dabble a little bit in it. But Chris got me into Guild Ball, and I will say, Bill, that your podcast really got me interested in the game even further. So it really is kind of an honor for us to talk to you because you guys are definitely a cornerstone of the gaming community of Guild Ball.
I appreciate that, and I will speak for Phil on this. I know for a fact he does too. I mean, hell, my co-host doesn't even play. He just hangs out and talks with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and paints.
So one thing that we always start off when we do these interviews, Bill, is we always want to start off with a rage quit story. So we were wondering if you brought us a good rage quit story to share with the listeners and us.
Okay, so anybody who knows me for any amount of time will know that I do not rage quit from tournaments.
Okay.
I run a lot of events. I am just adamantly against quitting games. I believe you should always play it through. I even believe, I've gotten in this huge discussions about this because I believe that as a player, you should be able to not only have fun with what's going on your side of the board, but have fun with the whole experience. Which means if your opponent rolls 11 dice and they all come up as sixes, yeah, that might sting a bit for what's about to happen to your model. But you should be able to cheer for them because that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, it is.
And there's a lot of people in our community that get really salty, and that happens, and they're like, F this, I'm out, flip the tape.
Hey, we're in that side of the community, man.
I realize that.
No, I understand what you're saying. Like, if cool experiences happen during a game, I get it. You shouldn't begrudge somebody their cool experience.
Right, and early on, I made that claim even while I was still playing the devil of a game 40K. And I did a lot of work personally to make sure that I could have fun in games regardless of which side was winning. So I'm really against rage quitting. Now, that said, for you guys, I will share with you my one rage quit story.
Okay.
This is a one night only.
I was playing last year, 2016, at SteamCon UK. Had gotten into one of the last chance qualifier tournaments over there and had a series of great games. And I got to this one game. Understand, I'm 5 hours ahead. I have friends back here in the States who are texting me, hey, how you doing? Hey, have you finished your round? Hey, tiebreak just went down. We can't see what's going on. What's up, right? So I get into this game, and suffice it to say, I was trying to be very accommodating for this game. The game started out, I thought it was going to be very positive. I went in trying to be very friendly. Not even trying. I think I was very friendly. I was excited to play my opponent. As we sat down, my opponent and I set up, and we start playing our game, and my opponent was... the nicest way to say it was a bit sloppy with how they measure. They were writing with a dry erase marker on a small piece of plastic on their side of the board, momentum, score, all that stuff, and it wasn't someplace easily seen. I'm constantly asking questions. So, and we're playing on a clocked game.
Yeah.
So, a couple of times I kind of went at this the way I would normally go at this with both newer players and players who may not be the most careful or exact, because I'm not the most exacting. I make mistakes. So there were times when, my opponent would measure something out and they would put their tape measure out and the tape measure would magically get a little longer. So I would offer them my, 6-inch widget or 8-inch widget. Hey, did you want to use this to measure? Let's go ahead and lay this down here and see what the range is. So things like this are happening, and I'm getting more and more frustrated, and I'm just trying to get to the end of the game.
Yeah.
There's 2 rounds left in the tournament after this, and I just want to get to the end of the game. And the game, at a little over halfway through, starts to turn against me. Right? Dice aren't coming up right. My opponent's dice are, I can't say magically, but they were coming up more often in their favor than not.
They got hot.
Yeah. So I'm getting frustrated, and I'm trying to just bear through, and I'm trying to keep a rosy outlook. And a couple people came over. I mean, to one extent, they're a very good U.S. player who was over in the U.K. last year, walks over to the table, watches 4 activations, and walked away. And when I talked to him afterwards, he was like, you were making mistakes, but your opponent, I couldn't watch how badly they were playing.
Yeah.
Right? So that gives you an idea. Like, it's not just me. So we get far enough in, and I get to an activation, and the score at this point is 10-10. So I look at the board, and I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, the score was 10-10. However, I thought it was my 10 to my opponent's 8.
Okay.
So I look at the board and I'm like, okay, so we're going into the maintenance phase. I think it was my Harry the Hat has 1 health left and fire. And I am up going into the maintenance phase. He's my last activation. I'm up like 9 momentum.
Okay.
So I look at the board. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't up 9. I was up 6 momentum. So I look at the board and I'm like, okay. So I look straight at my opponent. I'm still on clock. And I said, just so we're clear, you're at 8. I'm at 10. If I clear this condition, I'll be at a +4 on my roll. If I don't clear the condition, Harry dies. We're both at 10, tied game, but I have initiative. My opponent looks me straight in the face and goes, yes. I said, okay, just again, so we're clear. If I don't clear that condition, I have initiative. And I'm looking at the board. I'm playing a vet rage team, and I'm set up for the kill in 3 different places. So I'm like, okay. So again, just so we're clear, you're at 8, I'm at 10. If I don't clear this, I die, but we'll be at 10-10.
Well,
yes.
Harry also comes back with, half-life, so it's definitely better than just clearing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, good. I hit the clock. We go into the maintenance phase. I pick Harry up off the board. My opponent goes, and that's 12. I win.
What a dick.
And I went, what? I said, no, you just said, but they waited till I pulled the model off the table. I said, but you just said, and my opponent goes, no, I'm at 12. And I said,
I'd be
cool.
effing furious.
I just looked, I went, no problem. And Bryce comes walking up to the table. I said, Bryce, I drop. And he goes, okay, so you lost? I'm like, no. I'm done. I drop. I'm out. And he looks at me, he goes, but you don't drop. I was like, Bryce, I'm fucking done. I'm out. And I just start packing my models up.
Oh, dude, I would have gone ballistic on that dude. I have no problem if I'm playing with a player that's a little bit sloppy. I have no problem with that as long as they're not going to, be really forceful and hold me to being real exact with my measurements.
I do have a problem with
But
that.
I mean, I don't care which way it is. Like, if somebody wants to be real precise and they want to hold me to a precise standard, I don't have a problem with that. I'm not put out by that or think they're being a jerk. And I don't have a problem if somebody wants to just be a little bit more cavalier with their movement, but then I'm more cavalier with mine. Then I'm cool with that. But
I would have yelled across the table, like, you're the problem with this game. And
yeah, I would have been like, you're the issue. This is bullshit.
Yeah, I bit my tongue. I dropped from the tournament. I texted a couple of people, and they were like, but you don't drop. Like, you don't know. They're like, tell me the story. I'm like, no, this is right. So the best part is later that night, all right, so I try to calm down. I run into a couple other friends of mine, and a couple Phil was over there in the UK, and a couple other guys, Alex Straub and Jordan and whatnot, and I vent, just fucking let loose. My opponent approaches me the next day at the bar and goes off about how if I'm going to talk about somebody behind their back and I have a problem with the way they play, why didn't I call a judge? And I just looked at him and I said, I'm sorry, you are the sloppiest player I have ever played against. To which point they tried to explain to me how they weren't a sloppy player.
See, I wouldn't have had that issue because he would have known how I felt to his face.
Right there, right?
Every single person that I knew would have known how I felt to his face.
Well, Chris is a loud person, so everybody knows what Chris thinks.
Oh yeah, like I would go out of my way to where if I ever saw that guy at a tournament again, I would mention that again to the person that's playing him. Like I would decimate this guy's reputation.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little mad listening to that story.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Bill,
Yeah.
if you ever notice that I'm playing this guy, and I don't know, maybe he's a foreign guy or whatever.
Just give you an elbow.
But you give me a heads up and be like, hey, don't let what happened to me happen to you. And I will not at all let it happen to me. Thank you for that Rage Quit story. I appreciate it. I know it steps out of your comfort zone and your norms. Let's talk a little bit about this Spring Fling, though. So you're running a tournament, so there's not going to be these problems because you get to call the shots.
That's right.
That is true. And
so, Spring Fling, tell us a little bit about it, and we're going to try and build this up for you in our area for sure.
So how long have you guys been playing Guild Ball?
I've been playing since the beginning of Season 2, and Pete has been playing since around Season 3, the beginning of Season 3.
So
End of Season 2, beginning of Season 3. Yeah.
Last year, so there have historically been two large non-convention tournaments in the U.S. I say historically because there's two that pop up. One being the Spring Fling, usually gets mentioned, Spring Fling and Fall Brawl. The other one's the Bourbon Trail Open. Jason Tate runs the Bourbon Trail Open, Zach Stein supports him, and then I run the Spring Fling. What is key about these tournaments, and the Fall Brawl was in there as well, however, I didn't do a Fall Brawl this year, 2017, because of timing. Last year's Spring Fling had 42 players in the U.S. We cover metas from New Hampshire and Rhode Island down to middle of Virginia, out to Chicago and Cincinnati. Huge swath of players. Last year, out of the top 16 players in the U.S., we had 12 of them. What was exciting for me last year about the Spring Fling was, yes, we had those high caliber, high competitive players. We also had a number, I think it was 6. I'd have to go back and look because I kept a record of it. So last year, I believe there was 6 additional players who had played one of their first 3 Guild Ball games at the Spring Fling.
Yeah, I heard that on your podcast. I was pretty impressed by that.
So when you look at that kind of range of players, this is a tournament that, yes, it's competitive, but it's an event that covers every skill level in the game. So this year is going to be a bit different, and I'll explain why. But last year, I made an effort to break up the pairings in such a way that after the first round, everybody's games had 2. Basically, the first round was random, but after that first round of the 6, everybody's game would have 2 factors to them that were consistent. 1, every game you played was closer in skill level than the one before. And number 2, every game you played during the day was more challenging, or during the event was more challenging. Now, I shuffled up how the pairings worked. I tried to keep as much of the pairings as possible, but made those minor changes. There was some hiccups with that. It took longer to do pairings during the rounds. So for some of that, I won't be doing the pairings the same way. The other reason I won't be doing the pairings the same way this year is there is as long as we get 30 registrations, pre-registrations by the day, April 28th and 29th, we will be a SteamCon qualifier.
Nice.
That said, that means I have to follow the OPD much closer than I did last year.
Okay.
But huge event, very exciting. I think trivia-wise, what's most interesting about that, and these numbers I do know, Spring Fling had 42 players. Bourbon Trail 2017 had, I think it was 39. The Spring Fling 2016 had 36 players, and Fall Brawl and Bourbon Trail before that each had 29.
Nice.
So when you look at those numbers, these are pretty much the two big events that are non-convention. Also amusing, prior to SteamCon 2017, the largest convention event before that was if you took the 5 combined pre-qualifying events at Gen Con and took all the unique players across 5 separate events, because they all kind of map to a single event, there was 49 players at that.
Nice.
Yeah. Well,
Now,
I think that the game's growing great in addition to having these event organizers that have some experience and know how to market these events and know how to run them to where people are having a lot of fun at them.
Yeah, and it's nice. I mean, you guys are going to be having an event down your way this year to add into that roster of big events. So I think the growth of the game right now and the growth of the competitive and the event-driven, independent event-driven community is fantastic to see. I'm so excited being on the front end of that.
Yeah, and I think Guild Ball is kind of up there with X-Wing as competitively. I think it's one of the cleanest games to play competitively because there's not as much, it's not like 40K with true line of sight. There's not as many rules you can argue about, It's either this way or it's not.
Right, exactly.
And I definitely think that's definitely one of your pitching points for your tournament that I love is just that new players will have a lot of fun at your tournament just because there are new players there and you will end up having some really close and really awesome games.
I also think it's a good lesson for people. You said you don't like to drop at tournaments. I think this is a good lesson for our listeners as far as why you don't drop at a tournament is as you play through that tournament, yeah, you might have had some frustrating games at the beginning, but you're able to start pairing with people toward the end that are closer to your skill level and closer to your record, where you really are getting some of your best, most competitive games that stretch you in a way that you're not able to get in casual play just around the shop, typically.
Yeah. Well, and I'll throw this out there. We had a local in our area, guy named Ben, who is a regular opponent of mine. And so the Northern Virginia area, Northern Virginia, Southern Maryland, has some very early, going all the way back to the Kickstarter, very early Guild Ball players. And people that have played a lot of games that switched over to Guild Ball as their primary game very early on. And as such, were fairly competitive. And Ben is a great example of somebody I like to hold up. He and I have great games. He plays in my local community, and he's a good player. But he was getting his ass kicked regularly and just horribly for months and months and months and was hugely discouraged. And I want to say his first Guild Ball tournament, I think, was Fall Brawl 2016. And he went into the Fall Brawl with a much larger field, feeling disappointed, kind of not really hopeful, and got matched up with people because when you go into a tournament, you get matched, typically against people that aren't in your area. Yeah. There's a better chance of that. In his first 3 rounds, he wrecked his opponents.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And all of a sudden he was like, wait, what? Like he ended up not placing up as high as the other people in our area for that first tournament. Yeah. He's since gotten there, but it was interesting to see him compare against other metas because you might, and it's kind of cool coming from a meta when you're the big fish, but when you're the guy that's getting beat on in another meta and it's a highly competitive area or highly competitive meta, I think it's huge to go to these larger events and stretch outside of your area.
Exactly.
Because suddenly you get a real evaluation of where you're at. There's things you see in the game that other people don't see. And it's not just about, oh, let's go out and beat the newbie. But it really is about where do I rate overall.
Yeah. No,
Now,
I totally agree with that.
by the same token, I also, as the TO, have a little bit of a perverse amount of fun because I talk with a lot of the people that are coming out to the event. So I kind of know the people who are big fish in little ponds.
What are you trying to say there, Bill?
Well, hey, I don't know yet, but it's kind of interesting to see some of those big fish roll into this really big lake not do quite so well.
Well, I'll tell you what. I like the idea of tournaments where, especially with tournaments like this, where people are coming from all over, where in that first round, people can have call-outs. And and those matchups that you've been wanting to see, when you're fresh and you just got there and you want to play against the best people, or maybe there's been a little bit of a rivalry or trash talking between metas or between podcasts even, or those types of things. I like it when somebody can call others out.
I'm going to share this with you, Bill, and the listeners. So we went down to the Nova qualifier down in Atlanta, and Brian White shows up for that tournament, right? And Chris just is like, hey, Brian White, I want to play you.
Which is a nice way for Chris to say, I didn't really want to qualify for the Nova.
Exactly. I didn't really want to go to DC.
Listen, there's one person at this table that hasn't lost to Brian White.
That's true. And it's Chris.
There you go.
Okay. But, I mean, I have no problem believing that he would stop my ass out.
No, that was a fun game, though. And that's why I'm glad we're going to these bigger events, because you see how, like, some of those top people play, and you're just like, you kind of evaluate yourself, and you're like, man, I need to get a little better.
Yeah. So one more thing about this Spring Fling that I think is important for our listeners to hear, and a huge selling point for it. Tell us a little bit about, your wife is a saint, and so she's trying to help you make this happen. And so tell us a little bit about what she's doing to try and make Spring Fling.
Helping us married nerds out.
So there's a couple of things we do. My wife is a saint. I am the first to step out and say that. Incredibly supportive gamer wife and games, and, just lots of saintly qualities. However, in relation to the Spring Fling directly, she and I got to talking. My wife likes to travel with me, and I have no problem traveling around. I've traveled to a lot of events. I travel for my hobby as well as for work. And as she and I were talking, coming out of a couple of events, she kind of looked, she's like, it'd be really cool if there was something for wives to do. And I was like, that's kind of brilliant. That's not just kind of brilliant. That's completely brilliant. So we do the Significant Other event. It started at Spring Fling last year. It's going to be happening even bigger this year. Now, this is not included in the Spring Fling ticket price. It's a separate, because when you hear what these women do and things, us men should never, just don't look behind the veil. Yeah. Don't look behind the curtain. But what we do is, in the Significant Other event last year, the women got together. There was about 10 women. They went over to a nail salon that was all set up. They did manicures and basically feet and fingers and wine and food, and then they went shopping afterwards. This year, she is setting it up to be even more involved. Now, I don't have all the details yet because, like everything with women, she hasn't shared them with me.
Fair enough.
But I do know, there's a couple of things she's been making phone calls about. So with no guarantees, one of them was she realized that if you have 10 to 15 women, then a limo to cart them around during the day is not that expensive, split among everybody. Yeah. She's already out talking to spas and nail salons and restaurants and wineries about doing events during the day there. Now, most of these happen on the Saturday, but doing events and at a discount. So she is underway in getting that set up, and I'm hoping early in January I will have all the details of the Significant Other event. The other hallmark and this is really just a hallmark of a Bill Anderson event, is you guys are in the Carolinas. Are you familiar with Duck Donuts?
No.
So Duck Donuts is over in the Outer Banks, and it's a donut place, but it's a gourmet donut place. They actually, you can sit there and watch them. They've bought all the little floaty donut machines, and they make the donuts right in front of you.
Okay.
We have a Duck Donuts right down the road from the game store. Every one of my events, we have Duck Donuts for everybody.
Oh, wow.
So the event starts during registration with donuts and coffee, and they are gourmet donuts.
That sounds like something we can get behind.
See?
I've never met a donut I didn't love.
Maple bacon donuts.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
that sounds great.
Everything I love right there.
Yeah, so it's exciting. I do not have the early confirmation on sponsors this year. However, our sponsors in the past have been very strong. Broken Egg Games has been a huge sponsor for us. Love those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Art of War, Grant over in the UK, fantastic sponsor. Mats by Mars, we have had a Mats by Mars mat on the top table every year so far at the Spring Fling. You know,
And
just
the winner
some.
wins that mat.
Winner does not win that mat. However, every year we have given away. The first year we gave away 3 mats. The second year, and the prize pool was 5.
Oh,
That's
wow.
awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
So
Do you guys do swag bags for the Spring Fling?
we do swag bags. As a matter of fact, anybody who attended the Spring Fling the first year got a. Geez, now I'm going to have to look to see which way it was. I believe they got a goal, and the second year they got a measuring widget. You know, the 3-5-2. 1 2 3 5.
Yeah.
So, yep, that was last year. They got a measuring widget and for the season 3 plot cards, Art of War actually sent a set of engraved tokens for the man marking, for vengeance token, all of that stuff.
That's really cool.
I'm already in process for the swag bag this year, so that's I'm excited. If I have one last finishing touch that I don't have confirmed yet, that if it comes through, well, one, it's going to be the best swag bag yet.
Nice.
Number 2, it's going to be well worth it. It's the price went up a little bit this year because I've had to come out of pocket for 2 years in a row on the event, not just for the normal out of pocket stuff like clocks and mats and stuff. So this year I had to raise the price a little bit, or the wife would murder me. However, what we do is everything past the cost of the event goes back into prize support, gift certificates, things along those lines.
That's
Yeah,
really
and I
cool.
will say this. I was talking with Jake, and he's running the How's That tournament down here in South Carolina, and he was showing me a lot of the swag that he's giving away for the tournament that he's running. And I mean, if you have guys up there in Virginia that like swag, I mean, he's got some cool sponsors that he has set up. I can't talk about it yet because he told me not to.
Yep.
But he's got some cool stuff lined up.
No, it's going to be a good event. I'm actually looking forward to. God, I hope I can come down to you guys' event as well.
Yeah, we hope
the
so,
How's
too.
That tournament.
I think the spring's going to be busy for everybody because there are some big tournaments in the spring.
Last thing I will say to everybody, full registration is actually live right now.
Oh, sweet. I need to go
So-
register.
Yeah, so when this podcast comes out, it will already have been live at least for a day, if not a couple of days. So it's out on Facebook. If you search for 2018 Spring Fling, it's going to kind of carpet bomb all of the Guild Ball groups here in a couple of hours. And, it's going to be a good event. Details will be coming and rolling in hot and heavy over the next couple months. And we're looking at basically April 28th and 29th, 2018. It will be a 2-day event. I am working on a discount room block, but at our venue. So cool thing is Huzzah Hobbies, which is where we're holding it again this year.
Mm-hmm.
We can hold up to 64 players in that store. I will challenge anybody to say it is not one of the cleanest, nicest stores you've been in the country. And I say that having traveling. I'm not saying the nicest, but it is certainly tied among that first place rank of top game stores.
Yeah, that's definitely great because, sometimes you go into a nerd store and you're just like, yep, this is kind of like somebody's basement.
Yeah, Chris, the store owner at Huzzah he's OCD, which is awesome. He's an old government project manager. So you add those two together, and now he's running a retail store, and it's out of control.
Yeah, and before we switch topics here, I will say, Bill, just everybody I've talked to says that you run a fantastic event, so we're looking forward to coming up to this year's Spring Fling.
Yeah, and we'll definitely, for those listening, we'll go over some of those details as far as sign up and stuff right at the end, just so you get them right at the end of our discussion with Bill. But
and you guys got to come up because it's kind of hard to keep talking, knowledgeably on a podcast without actually experiencing events, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's our one ding, so we got to get that fixed.
We all love those people who talk knowledgeably about things they never actually have to support by showing up and playing a game.
They're like, I don't want to play the game, I just want to talk about it.
But yeah, we want to get out there. We want to be able to play with, the other metas around the country, and I have no fear of that, although I'm sure I'll take a lot of lumps and losses along the way. So one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on, Bill, is you are a top 5 ranked, I think you're actually number 4 ranked Morticians player in the country.
Am I? Damn.
Yeah.
Did you look it up?
Yeah, I think you're number 4.
I'm going to look it up. I'm going to make sure Chris isn't lying.
I think of all the Mortician players in the U.S., he's number 4.
All right, well, go ahead.
Okay, anyway, so I use Longshanks.
Okay.
What we want to do is we want to talk a little bit more of Morticians with you. Pete and I aren't experts with Morticians by any means. I think both of us have shied away from them a little bit in this Season 3 because Obelisk took some hits and took some nerfs. And they...
Well, okay, come on now. Let's put that in perspective the way what you really mean.
Okay.
The community as a whole and the trendsetters who overplayed Obelisk in the previous season say he's bad, so you were afraid to risk playing him.
Hey, Bill, you are number 4 in the United States.
that may be the case, but that's what we want to talk to you about. We don't claim to be experts on all guilds, and so let's talk about the Morticians a little bit. We've got some questions from some of our listeners, but let's just start here. A lot of the questions revolve around piece of advice that you have for new players, and then breakdowns as far as uses for Obelisk versus Scalpel. So let's kind of start there. I'll let you run with that, and you can tell us what your advice is for new players and the 2 drops.
So the first thing I would say is this. As a new player coming in, looking at Morticians, they are a control team. So you have to, you have to have the mindset that matches playing a control team. And that isn't, I don't think that's as direct or as top tier as control is in other games. I believe it's similar. I don't play control in a lot of other games. However, Morticians really fit my style for Guild Ball. They're a bit understated. You really have to have a plan going in, and you have to be able to execute your plan. Now, with that said, that means that they're coming at the game of Guild Ball sideways. So it's going to be challenging for a new player to just pick them up and play them, especially if you as a new player have a mindset that is more linear, more straightforward, direct. I kill things and thus I get points. I score goals and thus I get points. So, to give you a good example, everybody I know that comes to Guild Ball from other games, War Machine and Horde specifically, but even out of Malifaux, Infinity, or God forbid, out of one of the GW games, they all seem to grasp the idea of, once I figure out how the playbook works, if I run forward and punch the crap out of you, I'm going to get some points. Yeah. It may be a long way to the finish line, but I'm going to get some points.
Okay.
Right? And I saw that early on with a friend of mine who got the Fisherman. And he kept wanting to run in and do damage, and he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that I'm attacking to bounce off of you and dodge.
Yeah.
So fish didn't really work for him. Now, I've seen a couple of other players who come at this from a sports-minded mindset. They look at the game, they go, "Ooh, it's soccer. I don't know why all these people have weapons. I just want to run around the field and shoot goals."
Around, yeah.
Right. So they do a lot of passing, they do a lot of things, and they gravitate to engineers, they gravitate to fish, they gravitate to alchemists, right? I can bounce the ball around. I hope I never give the ball up. Please, God, don't make me miss my 4 dice passes and 5 dice goals and win, right? And that's a shorter path to victory, but they go that way. Morticians do none of those. Right?
So this actually goes into something that Pete and I have talked about, and you can expound. But that's one of the things with these control teams that seems a little bit frustrating is there's definitely 3 play styles. There's melee, there's scoring, and there's control. But control teams, controlling doesn't inherently give you victory points, whereas scoring and melee does.
True. And so you guys have talked about hunters, at least on the last couple episodes I listened to.
Yeah.
And you talked about them as a control team. I listened to another podcast talking about hunters, and they were talking about the fact that people that play hunters get caught up in all these character plays, and they play the game in over 5 rounds. They do 35 different character plays, never score a point, never generate momentum, and then they can't figure out why they lost.
Yeah.
What I will say is this. In my experience with hunters, I see that, and I also see hunters really struggle to pull together the mix of their control with doing the other stuff in the game, scoring points through goals, scoring points through killing.
Yep.
They don't have a single model who will just evaporate a opposing player. They don't have a single model who's going to go flying up and score a goal. They take a lot of setup.
Yeah.
Morticians are a bit different. Morticians actually have models that will do that scoring among the best in the game, but they do it a little bit to the side. So it's their goal scorer is not a straight-on goal scorer like a Mist, like a Midas, like a Vitriol, like even a Brisket, right? It's both Bonesaw and if you take Bonesaw, and also if you look at Brain Pan and Memory, they're to the side.
Yeah.
Right? They're just slightly off. You got to do a little bit of jank to get there, but it's only a little bit of jank.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you look at their killers, right? So you look at Cassette. Cassette will kill a motherfucker. She will evaporate a model.
But she's definitely one that you have to play that little mini game of getting the
Bird.
other model, getting that mask.
Well, not only that, you got to realize that if you do go into somebody, you're probably going to die if somebody can get to you.
And that's the other side of it, right? She is complete glass cannon.
Yep.
I mean, you sneeze, she's dead. And you sneeze wrong, she doesn't even get the kill.
Yeah.
So you have to mix, like they have heavy control in Morticians, but I still have tools that are just brutal tools at what they do. So then it's a matter of fitting together the tools with the control and using the control to set up my tools.
Okay. So what do you think then about the Obulus and Scalpel drops? Like, where do you use one over the other?
Where do I use one over the other? I don't advocate for this, but personally, and this is where Morticians get funny. I think Morticians are an incredibly personal fit team.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I use Scalpel in casual games.
Okay.
And Obulus in tournaments.
Do you think Scalpel's easier for a new player to play?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Scalpel's very direct, but if you play her very direct, she's not going to accomplish a lot.
Okay.
Yes, Tax 7 with Anatomical should get her push dodge off regularly. Should get her robbing influence off regularly. The problem is, one, in my experience, the push dodge is not a regular. I mean, you're talking about 7 dice going down, 7 dice against a 4-1. You're actually siding on the low end. That's not the push dodge. That's only 3 successes. As far as moving the influence around, you got to put the influence in the right places. Otherwise, you're just gearing up a bigger play from other models on the team. So you're not removing it from the table necessarily unless you can kill a model. And Scalpel still needs that setup to kill a model. Now, what I have had great success on her for is kick off with her, threaten first turn, damage and goal, and then either knee slider or second wind back out to basically be back at my deployment zone. And that really puts people on their back on their heel at the beginning of the game. Scalpel works well, and see, in my opinion, Scalpel works well against armor, but not high armor. I don't like playing her into Masons. I'm terrified to play her into Blacksmiths.
Yeah, I think Blacksmiths are actually going to be a hard drop for Morticians.
Yep. Now, the other side is she doesn't necessarily have the killing power you need in a high influence captain, so I wouldn't put her into farmers. I may see, and my challenge is everything I want to do with her, Obulus does better.
Okay, so why don't you speak about Obulus then for a minute?
So Obulus, especially for new players, I challenge people, if they're going to get into Morticians, do not go out and read the internet wisdom on playing Morticians, especially if you're going to play Obulus. And the reason I say that is this. There is still a lot of Season 2, quote-unquote, knowledge out there about Obulus, and it no longer applies, right? There's still a lot of tactica. There's still a lot of articles written with the idea of Obulus having a massive amount of influence, having a higher attack, and being able to just go beat people down, use the control as they are. And that's not really what he does anymore. Now, he can do it. You're still talking about a captain who brings a tremendous amount of influence to the table. You're still talking about a captain who, with a little bit of setup, can... So if you think about this, right? If I get my dream, right? I get one crowd out on a knockdown model, and I get to tool up Obulus. Now you're talking about tax 6 against a 3-1. I'm hoping I can hit my 4 successes to go down to 3. And if I can get tax 7, I'm pretty reliably hitting my successes, so two gang ups. And now I can potentially, with tooled up, put out 21 points of momentous damage. But that's it
takes a lot of setup.
Yeah,
it takes a lot of setup. And that's the difference, is it used to be Obulus could just do that. Now he doesn't. What I find with Obulus is I tend to run him as a neutral captain. He gets 5 influence, and if I can tool him up good, what I want him to do is I want him to threaten both Puppet Master, preferably, or misdirection, because a lot of people don't see the misdirection coming.
Yeah, that's a pain in the butt.
And the key now is understanding your opponent's models to be able to know where pulling one influence off is going to make a difference.
Like Boar?
Like Boar, but here's a better one for you. Going with the new Blacksmiths. Pull one off of, most people are going to be looking at Ferrite or Iron. Iron still needs one to kick, but a lot of people will put just 1 or 2 on him.
Yeah.
Well, if you take 1 off of him and leave him with 1, now he has to choose between kicking and doing impetus to get the extra movement.
Exactly.
Right? If you look at your briskets, you look at your strikers, pull 1 off of any of them.
Yeah.
Right? Pull 1 off of Mist and watch Mist go down to 3 influence, and look how that changes his goal.
It takes his threat down.
So, those are important moves. Now, I still think Puppet Master is what Obulus is all about, and confidence. A lot of people in my experience, I've seen a lot of people surprised when I hand out confidence to 3 models. Or when I want to knock somebody down, so I confidence myself swing, miss it for some crazy reason, so confidence myself and swing.
So a question that I have, Bill, just because I think this is interesting to hear when I talk to Mortician player, is how do you like using Obulus's legendary? Like, when do you feel like is a good time to hit that?
And also, while we're on this topic, explain that legendary play, because I feel like a lot of new players and even experienced players, but ones that aren't familiar with the Morticians, play this legendary play incorrectly.
So his legendary play, the legendary play works like this. Do you, my opponent, have momentum that I don't think you should have. Okay, you don't have it anymore.
Okay, and then you take
And I
that
get it
momentum.
all.
Okay.
I get it all.
And now this is where I've seen people get into arguments, and I want you to clarify, because you're going to be you're a pundit, you're a high-ranking player in this. I expect that your answer is going to be the most accurate. There are players that I've seen play this where at the end of that legendary play it says, this legendary play does not last until the end of the turn. And they take that to mean that you have to use whatever momentum you have taken away from the opposing player by the end of his activation, or that momentum reverts back to the opposing player.
No.
Okay.
That's incorrect.
Yeah.
You've gained it. This does not last till the end of the turn means it means once I've done that, you can start earning momentum again.
Yeah.
That's what I understand it to mean, and so that's why I wanted to make sure that this was clarified.
So when do you like hitting that legendary, Bill?
Okay, so see, and you used a key word there. When do I like, and what is my preference on when to hit it over when do I use it?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna flip those answers around and give you the second one first.
Okay.
Using Obulus's legendary it's critical to understand game state. Okay, when is it important? Not so much when is it important to take momentum from your opponent, but when is it important for them not to have the momentum, and combine that with when is it important for you to have momentum you may not have had before. So, do I need first turn? If I need first turn, then if I need to go first with initiative next turn, then the last thing I want to do during this turn is take your momentum.
So do you usually activate Obulus kind of like your 5th or 6th activation of the turn then?
He is typically a late activation, and I want to save his legendary as long as possible in the game because the strength of his legendary is the threat. So I wanted to pause with that last thing because there's going to be a bunch of people yelling at the radio right now, right?
Yeah.
That's completely wrong. But now you got to step back and clarify because I want people to digest this in pieces, right? So I'm going to take your momentum late in the turn if I need to go first. But wait, now we have to start looking at game state. Am I already up 6 momentum on you, 5 momentum on you?
Yeah.
Then I don't need to take your momentum. Do I need to stop you from doing something? Am I playing butchers and have your butchers racked up 11 or 12 momentum and you still have 2 models to go? Well, then I need to strip that off to make sure I can recover from what you just did to me on this turn, right? But the longer it's out there as a threat, the more savvy players will actually burn their own momentum off.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think new players make that mistake when they play Morticians because when I see Obulus activate, and I'm a brewer and a farmer player, I'm like, okay, now I can just rake up the momentum because he's no longer a threat to do it.
And part of playing against an Obulus player and against Morticians is forcing them to activate out of their order because they are an activation order, focused team. Now, let's go back. When do I prefer to use it? I play Morticians as a 3-kill, 1 goal team.
So you bring Casket a lot?
I bring Casket in almost every game.
Okay.
I actually think he's incredibly important for Season 3 on. Now, we'll see what changes in Season 4, but I think he's a key player for Morticians in Season 3.
Yeah. You're talking like auto-include.
Damn near an auto-include. Okay. Because he shortens the path to victory points, and Morticians already have a longer path to victory points.
Okay.
He's a scary model because if Casket time goes off, it swings it in your favor pretty quick.
But take Casket time out of it. He's still an interesting and a challenging model. He has heavy burden, so he can slow you down, and put a crimp on your character plays.
And
he
charge.
has right. Ghostly Visage. He can shut down your charges, and he has regenerate.
Yeah.
So go ahead and beat on him. Tough hide and regenerate. Go ahead and beat on him.
Yeah, he's a pain.
right? So he's hard to pull out. Now, he's going to slow things down in the middle of the board for you and you as the Morticians player and your opponent, but I think he's important. But this is what I love. Notice I said 3 kills, so I'm focusing on just getting my kills, getting my casket time, and I want to have the ball. But Morticians have a lot of really good ways to get the ball back. Graves has a tackle on 1. If you're holding the ball, God help you, because unless it's on Siren, Obulus will make you just give it to him. So just those 2 alone, never mind, then you start to look at the other models in there that can get the ball back. It's very easy for Morticians to get the ball from you or get it in the open. With that said, I prefer to go all the way up to the final turn, be near mid-table with the ball on Obulus, and then take first turn, because everybody goes, whoo, okay, I'm going second, which means he doesn't have momentum. And then I take your momentum.
Yeah.
And I use your momentum to score my final goal.
You're saying that you want to have Obelisk even when if you're able to score a turn 1 goal, use his legendary play to just take the 1 momentum off to enable.
No. If I don't look at scoring turn 1 goals. I'd rather hold the ball. However,
first activation of a turn goal.
First, I want my winning goal to be the first activation of the last turn.
Okay. Yeah, that's a sweet technique.
Yeah, I can't remember. I might have heard Jared talking about that, but he said a real cheeky way to get a goal is you let them essentially you go first. You use the legendary to steal their 1 momentum and go score a goal.
Yep. Yeah, but I like to do that last because then I have the goal in the bucket. Now, if I can get ahead somewhere, I'll do it elsewhere. But again, I want that threat of his legendary out there for as long as I can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Man, that would be like a really dick move if no one had ever seen that before and you get that done to you.
One question that we had asked, and I thought this was interesting, is JS Imbu. He basically asked if Bonesaw is the Mortician savior in hiding, or is he just a tall, bald guy with sick dance moves?
Okay, so Bonesaw for me is the most frustrating model in the team and one of the most frustrating models in the game.
Okay.
Bonesaw, there's no middle ground when I've played him, for whatever reason, there is 0 middle ground with him. He is either my MVP or I want to smash the model. He just doesn't do anything else. He either scores both my first and my last goal and just wrecks the team, not just nails every unexpected arrival, but nails it in the perfect time. My opponent gives me setup after setup and everything is perfect, or he delivers nothing all game. And unfortunately, when you put him on the table, it is very hard to use him as just a battery.
Looking at the new rat catchers that are coming out, this is something that I think is good for Morticians, but it's also bad because you're going to hopefully get a better version of Bonesaw, but you're also going to lose Mist. So do you want to kind of share your thoughts on kind of the rat catchers coming out?
So I'm excited about the rat catchers, and I'll talk about Scourge in a minute. Okay. Skulk. I keep wanting to call him Scourge, but it's Skulk. Yeah. Suffice to say, as a spoiler, I think Skulk is a must take. Okay. He's amazing, but I'll come back to that because I got stories from SteamCon about that.
Sweet.
So Bonesaw, I am interested to see how the rat catchers play, to see how Bonesaw fits into their team.
Okay.
I actually am a bit challenged, and I don't think Bonesaw. I think the only reason Bonesaw may make my tournament 10 is because of farmers, but I haven't fully. I'm not 100% comfortable using Bonesaw to farmers. I haven't played enough versus farmers games with my Morticians.
Are you speaking because of Unexpected Arrival?
Unexpected Arrival to blow the farmers apart, and the fact that farmers, because they have no armor,
yeah,
I am more I can more reliably get it. Yeah. But he's just a challenging model to use.
So Do you use Mist a lot in your lineups? Or are you going to be kind of sad to see him go?
I am going to be very sad to see Mist go. I'm just happy that my alternate team is Union.
Okay. So you'll get to use him a little bit still.
Right.
Okay. So just kind of, because you brought up farmers there for a second, and I was talking with Jake Smith last night, and we were looking at farmers, and win rate percentage is somewhere up like in the 70s now, and we're like, that's not good for the game. So what is your quick thought on that before we keep up with Morticians?
Most new teams spike early on.
Yeah.
Especially when their OP is all hell.
Yeah. I'll put it to you this way. I have had pretty even games into farmers. Well, a couple of things. One, I haven't played in a tournament since August due to scheduling, and really it's just down to scheduling.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I haven't faced them in a tournament setting. Now, I have played lots of tournament prep games and played those against farmers. I have not cracked the Thresher secret yet, but my games against Thresher are games where I feel like I'm almost there.
Yeah.
It seems like I got it, and then it's, was it just dice? Was it, I think I figured this out, maybe not. When I look multiple teams, when I look at prep against Grange, I actually think Grange is stronger than a lot of people are giving him credit for.
Chris and I agree.
Yeah, we do. See, that's what's going to happen. Like, no one's going to have to figure out Thresher, because what's going to happen is Steamforged is going to nerf Thresher. They already see that it's a problem. I'm sure you'd have to be blind not to see that. But all the focus is on Thresher right now, and so they're probably going to leave Grange alone. And I actually have more concerns about that, because I think Grange is the A drop, and most people just don't realize he's the A drop.
So here's the funny thing I've found about Grange, and I want to caveat this. This is an opinion right now. It's not a definitive.
Yeah.
I don't have the playbook on how to make this reliable. But this is one of the other things that I'm looking at. I think that Steamforged did an amazing thing with farmers and blacksmiths. And the amazing thing I think they did is not necessarily make them overpowered. I think what they did is they made two teams. They sat down and said, what do people expect? Just when you look at these teams, what should they do? And then they said, okay, everything we just put on that list, don't do that. So farmers, I think a lot of people did not expect them to be a beady team, especially, no armor, slow movement. Really, the damage is not over the top. And they expected this kind of mobile, squishy team. And what you ended up with is potentially one of the strongest fighting teams in the game, but they come at it in a slightly different way. And I don't think anybody has really looked at how to deal with that yet. The people that are starting to kind of work around it. There's still a lot of people puzzling out how to make it work. And there's some ingrained assumptions. And I think farmers are one of those things where a lot of us as players, have built-in preconceptions that we're still struggling to break the preconception, and we have to do that before we come up with a cookbook on how to beat that team.
Yeah.
I looked at the farmers, and my first several games, I've been playing Vet Rage a long time, since he came out. I love Vet Rage. I played Vet Rage into my first probably 5 games against farmers and got wrecked.
Yeah, I think a big problem is all that 2-inch reach.
And
just
Momentous knockdown on one.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Momentous knockdown on one, pushes, 2-inch reach, and oh, by the way, a whole hell of a lot of health.
Oh, and healing.
So I switched over to Blackheart.
Yeah, it probably does better.
So I have played 2 games halfway through with Blackheart and 4 games with Blackheart against farmers all the way through, and I haven't lost the games I've played all the way through. The 2 games I got halfway through, I was up on points and well on the way. Now, are they easy games? No.
Yeah.
But when you field a looking to score 2-inch reach team with mobility, you actually can dance around the farmers. And God forbid the farmers split a model or 2 out to try to go run you down, because most teams can kill a single farmer's model.
Oh, yeah.
So playing around them, I think fish are going to be great into farmers.
Yeah, I found that's a difficult matchup when I played into them with my couple farmers list I got. Getting back on track though, Bill.
Yep.
You were talking about Skulk. What are some of your thoughts about that new model?
So I glued Skulk together my first game at SteamCon. I played all casual games at SteamCon, and a lot of them were Rookie League games. So I was really focused on my rookie. I glued them together during my first game, and starting my second game forward, I played Skulk in all but one game. So I got to the game where I didn't play him. I was playing Mr. Danny Dean out of Houston, and he brought Masons out, and we had agreed just to play a straight-up game, right? No rookies, nothing special, just sort of a pseudo-tournament competitive game, not in a tournament, just casual. So with that being said, I was like, I don't think I really need Skulk in my list, and he's a brand new model. I don't want my opponent to feel that I kind of got one over if I do really well. So I pulled him out. Skulk straight shuts down scores.
Nice.
It just shuts them down. Flint, 3 times Flint did jank, normal Flint jank, and I went, God, I wish I had Skulk on the table. Every time, and there's a couple of things on Skulk that are important. The way his rule reads, if a opposing model ends a dodge within 6 inches of Skulk, he walks over to them. So where'd they go? Acrobatic,
what
an
is,
attack
what's
that
Skulk's
dodges.
jog real quick?
He's a hold on one second, I'll get the card out, but I believe he's a 7'9".
Wow.
Right? Yeah, I got his card right here. So I'm sorry, Skulk is a 5'7", attack of 6, 2-inch reach. That's where the 7 comes from, 7'9".
Jesus, that's brutal for scoring teams.
Okay, so if you dodge and end your dodge within 6 inches of him, he will walk over to you. If you'll love this. So he brings 2 influence with him, right?
Yeah.
If you spend 1 influence, you put up horrific odor. That makes any kick made within 6 inches of him cost an extra influence. If you put up pest control, which can be triggered off of his playbook, but it also costs 1.
Okay.
Enemy models within this model's melee zone are -1, -2-inch kick.
Jesus.
Okay, so let's think this through. You just dodged into Skulk's range. So he walks 5 inches and engages you at 2 inches. So, oh wait, other than Vitriol and Mist, there's not a lot of 2-inch strikers out there.
Yeah.
Now, you would imagine...
Unless you're playing the fisherman.
Yeah, fisherman.
Right. Well, but that's because everybody on the fish team is
a
strike. Right? So, but even at that, 2 inches, we're all good. Right? I already have horrific odor up because if I see you even contemplating a goal run, I'm going to put horrific odor up, and I'm probably going to put pest control up.
Yeah. Because why not?
So, right. Now let's say you walk away. 1, you're risking my tackle on 2 and tackle double dodge on 4 with a 6-inch tack or a attack of 6. And if you're going to try to walk away, oh wait, I have follow-up. And if you're going to attack me, I have poised.
Yeah, it's just, and you don't realize it, and I think this, and you can kind of chime in on this is kind of the rumor going around on the internet, but that the rat catchers are going to be that pretty much like dilemma team where it's like, yeah, you can do this, but if you do it, there's going to be this negative consequence from the guild.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they talk about that to some extent in the UK keynote with the dilemma mechanic, right? Where there's going to be abilities in the team that say, okay, I just used my character play. You have a choice. Do this bad thing or that bad thing.
Exactly. Which I like. I mean, it fits in with kind of like the Morticians control theme. So it's cool that they made it a little different, but it still fits with the big league guild.
Now, what I am intrigued to see is Pelage, the chick with the rats, because she's the other play up. Like I said, Skulk doesn't just make my 10 at this point. He makes my team. Unless I'm playing a straight-up fighting team who's not likely to bring a strong striker, he just makes my team.
Yeah.
Because even if you only have a single striker, to either send him off to shut that striker down or to just use his 2-inch to engage to set up other people are both incredible. and he's honestly for a Mortician, he's a 2-6 kick. Most of the Morticians have crappy 2-6 kicks.
Yeah.
So I like him on the team. He brings 2 influence, which is a good thing. I think he makes every list. Now, I'm intrigued to see what Pelage does because, right, it's easy to assume that she'll be like Cassette with some lure and or like a Siren with some lure and things like that. But I'm not sure they're going to go that way. So I'll be intrigued to see how they play her out to see what role she has.
She'll probably be handing out some STDs.
Something.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think what we'll do, Chris, I'm going to give you one more question, and then we're going to have this little debate with you and you and Bill about this alternate deployment.
Okay. So I guess just the last question is, well, we'll take one from Chief in Salt Lake. He asked, when do you use vet graves versus regular graves, and the corresponding reactions to that, things like taking the Bioswarm instead, that sort of stuff.
Do people use vet graves?
Well, that's why it was asked. He doesn't get used very often, so I figure this is the guy to ask.
Okay.
Does Graves have a veteran model?
I didn't think he did.
So when do I use Vet Graves? When my opponent lets me use the Vet Graves model as the O Graves model because I like the model better.
Okay.
I really think he's potentially one of the worst models in the game.
Okay.
Well, because his whole back part of the card is just useless because nobody brings Bioswarm.
I'll up you on that. Even if the backside of his card was halfway useful, or if Vialswarm was a decent mascot, which he's, I don't know. Dirge, I think, just is better across the board.
Yeah.
But here is the other side of Vet Graves. Taking Vet Graves, yes, I pick up a knockdown, but my knockdown is on 3 non-momentous and on 5, on attack 5. Okay? I'm not getting my knockdowns. Number 2, I am sacrificing a tackle on 1.
Yeah.
Even if it's non-momentous, I'm sacrificing a tackle on 1, and honestly, I need the tackle on 1. I'm also sacrificing tooled up.
Aren't you sacrificing damage target too? Because doesn't Oak Graves have damage target?
So he does, and damage target is kind of interesting. O Graves has damage target. Just to be clear, damage target is what ups your charge movement.
Yeah.
It's not the one that also adds, if you're bleeding, you get extra damage.
Yeah.
And that's kind of important. I have found that O Graves with his he's got movement 5/7 already, 2-inch reach on him.
Yep.
I rarely have to make use of damage target to get him in and engaging.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those tools where it's nice
So
to have.
I don't like extending him way out from my team. I like him in range to be able to toss a tooled up out if I can get it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a nice to have. More importantly, like I said, the 2 big things that I'm losing are tooled up and tackle on 1.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that I'm losing is the ability to hand bleed out without triggering a play.
Yep. And that's why when you asked that question, Chris, I was just like, yeah, but...
Well, and that's why I asked it, right? People are looking for it. How's this model
he's going to be
used?
one of
he doesn't get used.
He's going to be one of the models that's crossing over to Rat Catchers. Do you think that maybe he'll have some playability there? I mean, I don't know if they're going to change him to make him fit in the Rat Catchers, but he's got to do something. He's not a good model right now.
So here's my fear. I hope so. I really hope so. My fear is they're not going to update either of them.
You think they're just going to say, hey, they can play over there?
Yeah, that's what I'm a little nervous about. I mean, I really want to see an updated Vet Graves, but I don't know. I don't have a good read right now on...
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for them to do that with those I wouldn't say
I
good,
do as well.
But
I do as well.
I think they should take advantage of it.
And I think they have to do something with Vet Graves to, simply because Vialswarm is everything on the back of his card. But I also believe that they're in a state right now, Steamforge is a state where they're very cautious. And if I would be less nervous about no or minor changes coming if it wasn't for the fact Rat Catchers are releasing in March.
Yeah.
Or I think in March or April, right? If it wasn't so early in the year, I would say, yeah, absolutely. I think they're going to, I foresee them being more cautious and then providing a broader update sometime in the summer.
I can definitely appreciate that, though, because like that's the reason I slowed down on playing War Machine was because they were updating stuff too frequently that I couldn't keep up with it. I'm just like, well, you're changing it every month. I don't know why I'm playing this game. So I definitely agree that them being cautious is good, but it definitely is frustrating when you got a model like that Graves that sees like 0 play. So with that being said, though, Chris has made it no secret that he enjoys the advanced deployment. I have heard on your podcast
you think it's the worst thing to ever happen to the game.
Yeah.
That's a quote.
Yep. Worst thing that's happened to the game.
Worst thing to ever happen to the game.
So I thought the only
I
decent
stand by
thing
that.
was to have you and Chris talk about what do you love about it, what do you hate about it, and just kind of we'll battle from there. And that'll be the last thing we talk about on the podcast here or the internet.
Okay, now, what's the point total? Like how many victory points do I get if I get Chris to rage quit the podcast?
I mean, I think
that would be pretty impressive.
You win the internet. I mean, I think that's just awesome.
Yeah, you're just...
That should be your goal.
Okay, so what do you love about the deployment as it is originally set up?
I like to play the game.
Okay, but that's not an answer. That's
No.
something...
I like this.
It
I
is.
like this
It is because alternate deployments make the game unplayable, and not only do they make it unplayable as a whole, doubly and triply punish any skill disparity between players, and specifically punish not the more skilled player, but punish the less skilled player to the point where they shouldn't even play.
Okay, so what is it about... Like, let's dive into this, right? Like, I appreciate what you're saying, but what is it that you...
So the game is not balanced for the alternate deployments. So it is too easy with multiple teams to set up a game that is effectively unplayable for one opponent if you deploy...
Give me examples of this. Like, in what way does it become unplayable?
A combat team into a not combat team. Any team that fields Avarice and Greed can block out 2/3 of the middle deployment line.
So you're saying like butchers being lined up and then engineers who don't want to be engaged being just... They're there to die, basically.
I'll give you a better one. Butchers lined up against alchemists.
Okay.
Butchers lined up against fish. Vet Rage lined up against pretty much almost anybody except for masons. Blacksmiths and farmers. Put them into alternate deployments. You can't play the game. You might as well just set your models up, take them off the board, and give the win to your opponent.
Yeah, and I heard you and Phil talking about this where you guys said if they were going to do this, they would have to almost change like all the ranges of the character plays and stuff to try and balance it out for this new deployment.
I mean, we can even go to simple things in the basic rules. If you retrieve the ball and pass it back to one of the models that you deployed on your goal line, you can't dodge him because you don't earn momentum. Because the basic rule of the game says the minute the ball is received or placed on or behind the goal line, you don't earn momentum. And they have to deploy touching that line.
So this is actually a great example, right? You're right. You can't create momentum there. That rule is designed to not encourage people to kick back behind their goal line. So those models that are deployed there, you're right, they won't be able to gain momentum by doing that.
And you're okay with that?
And I'm okay with that because I'll tell you what's so much worse than that is I would imagine that part of you saying I want to play the game is saying, well, those setup turns, that turn one setup, that's important to the game. Am I correct in...
It is very important to the game.
Okay, so this is the whole reason why I like this new deployment, because then instead of us taking that setup period as a whole turn of the game, you do that setup when you're deploying anyway. Like, it speeds up the entire game. And
I wish that was the fact, except that you're simply incorrect about that, because the alternate deployments don't allow you to do the proper setup of setting up your first turn. They mandate the 3 locations on the board that you are allowed to deploy, and mandate a third of your team must deploy to each area. So I am actually robbed of my tactical capabilities of setting up the first turn. If you were, for example, to say alternate deployment says you can set up however you feel your perfect first turn setup would go within your half of the board, then I would agree with you. But that isn't what it says.
I will say, I do hate that, because there's some games where it's like I don't want people on the front line, and there's other games where I don't want them on the back line. So I think that could be a tweak that would make it better.
You can't play sports that way anyway. Like, could you imagine if somebody said, okay, well, I want to play football or soccer or any other sport, and I just want to choose to not put people on the line of scrimmage?
The other thing that happens is if you are not the more skilled player and you want to play this combat sports game on the sports side of it, you can't. And you just pointed that out, because the first activation, if you're receiving, is to go retrieve. Then you either kick it to somebody who can immediately lose the ball to the other team who has properly deployed a shark or somebody, or you kick it back to the back where it's almost safe, except not really, because you don't get momentum and you can't move into safety back there. So basically, once you move up to retrieve the ball, you've put yourself out of position and hurt yourself on playing the sports game.
Yeah, so Chris, why don't you go ahead and share what are some things you hate about the standard deployment?
So the very things that Bill is describing as far as the disadvantages of the advanced deployment are things that I hate in the standard deployment. For instance, I can't stand that you can retrieve a ball and then just kick it around to guarantee that you gain momentum and your opponent doesn't, and then score your turn 1 goal at the end of the turn, right? You should have to make a choice. The ball should be live. You should have to choose, do I want to retrieve this ball and kick it over to another model and have them score right away versus kill the ball in the back? Like, that's part of what I can't stand about the existing deployment. I like that the first turn you automatically get into the action, whether that means melee or whether that means scoring. You can't just kill it and then play this game of chicken and delay throughout the first turn of setup. Like, you have to do that as you're deploying.
You would rather play a game that's horribly broken towards one player because of the deployment rather than learn how to either respond or basically learn how to respond to a first turn goal.
No, I have no problem with the first turn goal. What I'm saying is it shouldn't be that somebody's able to tuck that first turn goal away in their pocket till the very end of the turn. If they're going to go and decide to score, they should have to do that. There should be a risk in you delaying that action. You shouldn't just be able to say, hey, I'm going to tuck this away. I'm going to kick it to all 6 of the models.
So, whoa. So you don't feel... Do you feel there's not a risk? Why do you feel there's not a risk to that first turn goal?
Because if you make sure that your last model is the correct model, a model like Shark that has what feels like infinite range, then you're definitely scoring turn 1.
Okay. Now he's down in my deployment zone, and I still, as the kicker, have a model left to activate. Unless you have knee slider, which means your real problem is with a plot card, not with playing out the first turn.
I'm going to go ahead and do closing statements for each of you. Closing statement, Chris.
All right. The thing that I love about that alternate deployment is that you get into the action of the game and be able to engage models, score immediately, right away, as opposed to using the first turn of the game just to set up and have the exact same turn 1, basically, of one team kicks around the ball and generates momentum and then tries to score, and the other team just tries to stay out of the right ranges on turn 1. So that's why I like it. I like that you actually get into the game, and that setup stuff is handled in the deployment.
Okay, so Bill, what are your closing thoughts on the alternate deployment?
I stick with worst thing that's ever happened to the game.
So for the listeners and for everybody on this podcast, I will state that I like the deployment that is in the OPD just because that's what's in tournaments and that's what I'm going to play. If somebody wants to do a casual game with the alternate, though, I don't have a problem with it. I've had just as fun games with it. So with that being said...
You have no idea how badly I want to play you right now, Bill. Like, if you were sitting at my dining room table, I'd be like, rack them up. We're doing this now.
Oh, I'd be down. I'm down.
I'd be like, we're playing 2 games because we're going to play the same list. We're going to play them on that standard deployment and the alternate deployment. And
let the chips lie where they will.
And there we go.
So, Bill, is there any last-minute things you want to share with the podcast before we kick this thing off?
April 28th and 29th. Spring Fling, come up to Ashburn, Virginia, throw down.
Give us some details on how people sign up.
Yeah. So if you go to Facebook and look 2018 Spring Fling,
okay.
And there's a link that goes right to a PayPal link, and that's there. If you message me, so bill@gamerslounge.coda.net, I will send that link to whoever wants it, and you can sign up that way. The big key is I'm going to need your email address and it's a prepay. So it's $35 for the weekend. And it is going to be a great time. I'm hoping to see lots and lots of people there. And I very much hope to see the both of you come throw down and prove that the Southeast actually has somebody other than Brian White.
I know, right? And so that being said, though, I know $35 seems like a lot to people sometimes for a tournament.
It's 2 days.
But it's 2 days. But also, just to get into the door to like a con, a lot of times will cost you $25, and that's not counting any events you do. So $35 is a superb deal for a 2-day tournament where you're going to get some great games.
And I know some of the listeners will care about this. How do you want them to handle if they are bringing significant others and they want to be able to participate with your wife's activities? How do they let you know about that?
So as long as I have everybody's email address, which they have to give me when they sign up, an email will be going out to go out regularly with updates on the Spring Fling. Updates will be how to sign up for the significant other event.
Okay.
So the big thing I would recommend to everybody is, and I've seen this not only with my own wife, but also the other women who are, put it this way, I just opened registrations today. We're already at 15 signed up. And of those 15 people, 3 of them are bringing their wives.
Okay.
The women's event is going to be fun. People are looking forward to it. This is a way to set up your Guild Ball weekend as a weekend away with the wife or girlfriend, and we won't tell your wife.
There. Very, very nice, Bill. All right. Well, with that being said, Bill, thanks for the interview.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, guys. And welcome to the podcasting fold, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. All right, well, we're back after that interview, man, and Bill had some awesome information.
Yeah, he gave us a lot of info. I didn't expect him to give us so much time. And so great ideas.
While we were interviewing, though, there was a couple questions we didn't get to. So I think we just want to we're going to keep this short because that was most of our episode. I just want to answer some of the questions that we didn't get to.
Well, let's start with Jake Smith's question.
All right, so what was Jake's question?
He's our buddy in Greenville. He's running the Old Jake's tournament. And he asked, if you were playing in a large tournament in April, say in a brewery in the South, do you think Morts would be a good choice to bring?
So, it's very...
How specific?
I know, and it's funny because I actually am going to a tournament in April, and it is in a brewery, and it's
the South.
Is Old Jake's How's That, and it is in the South, and it's in Greenville, so that works out perfectly.
And I would not be bringing the Morts to it.
I am also not bringing the Morts. So here's the thing: if you're a Morticians player and you have practice with that guild, and you're really good at controlling people, I think you have a good chance of doing well in the tournament. There's going to be some newbies there because we have some people that are kind of newer to the game that are going to that tournament. We also have some experienced players that are pretty decent, and then you have a couple really good players that are going to be there. And if Bill Anderson comes and he plays Morticians, he's going to play a good game. Jared McGraw is a good Morticians player, and he is going to bring a good game. And there's a couple other from the Carolinas that are really good Morticians players. So if you get a lot of practice with any of these guilds, you can do well in the tournament, and that includes Morticians.
Yeah, unless you're playing the farmers.
I tell you what, Morticians, if you are good with them, you have a decent shot at farmers just because you can control them. But if you slip up, then it might get bad quick.
Yeah.
So one question that we didn't quite get to, where's the one that I want, is Dan White ended up saying, and this is Dan, I think, from Midwest Gaming, right? His least favorite Mort is Ghast. I don't know. What do you think about Ghast personally?
I feel like Ghast is one of the few damage dealing options that they have. Like, obviously, Cosset is one of them.
Yeah.
But I don't see them putting out a whole bunch more damage outside of her, other than Ghast.
So, because what he brought it up is he said he's one of the players that can make your opponent basically waste influence and waste resources. He was just asking, like, what guild do you think hates seeing Ghast the most? And me personally, I think it's a team that brings not a lot of influence. So, like, Hunters, generally, they're a lower influence team. Just because they usually either bring Hearn or they'll bring the Bear, and they don't like wasting any influence. So I think Hunter's Ghast is a pretty decent drop. Ghast might wet himself if he sees the Bear, because the Bear got him in the fluff.
Yeah. But I like the fact that he's higher tact than most of the Morticians. He's got that early momentous knockdown on
He has Rising Anger, too.
And then the character traits are a huge one with Rising Anger and Fear. They can both be very, very difficult.
Yeah, the thing I don't like about Ghast, though, is that he's only a 1-3 influence. It's one more influence you're not getting.
But, I mean, 20 blown boxes, that's pretty solid. So, I like his chances in melee. I like the 2-inch reach. I like Ghast. I think that he's a very reasonable include. And I like taking him along with... Not only, I think that they can pretty much dominate the middle of the board if you take him and Casket. Because Casket has other things that make it difficult to take him out, like the Tough Hide and the Reanimate. And he's got a good number of boxes, too. He's got 17 boxes. So, sitting those two in the middle of the board really can bog down an opponent.
Yeah.
And there are some that are going to be able to overcome it, really high damage output teams, like the Butchers, like the Brewers. But there are many that maybe just want to get into melee, but aren't going to deal with those two models in the middle of the board as well.
Yeah, I mean...
Although you have to be careful with that, because you are taking two models that only generate one influence.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just... You got to know what you're doing with him, and he's just good for sitting in the middle of the board, soaking up some influence. But you can't throw him straight into a scrum. It has to be situational.
Yeah, so if you are planning on doing something like that and taking two models like that and sitting them in the middle of the board and weighing down your opponents, then make sure that the other models that you take are going to generate 2 influence. It's probably better to do that with Obelisk than it is with Scalpel, because Scalpel only generates 4 and Obelisk generates 5, which is really high.
Yeah, so I think you're more likely to see him in a Obelisk team for sure.
Yeah, and they're so good as far as a control package.
So another question, Chris, I want you to rate this team. This is from JS Imbo, sure. So he wants you to rate this team: Scalpel, Vile Swarm, Graves 2, Cosset, Ghast, and Mist.
It's okay.
Do you think it's okay?
No, I think it's less than okay.
I think...
I guess I'm trying to be a little bit polite, but I mean, if somebody wants to take the Vile Swarm and Graves 2 against me, I mean, I'll be thrilled to see that. I will fuck that list up.
So I think it's a cute list, but I think it... So here's the thing, like, he said that basically, I guess, like, somebody from New Zealand ran this list and did well with it. What I'm guessing is that there's a couple gotchas in here that you could catch people with, but once people are kind of wise to it, I don't think people would lose to it that much. Because I think the gotchas are from, like, Vile Swarm blowing up and putting poison onto people and crap. Graves benefiting from Vile Swarm. Scalpel kind of... Scalpel's good. I like Scalpel.
It's tough because this list works against itself in the sense that you're taking Vile Swarm because of Graves 2.
Yeah.
That means you don't take Dirge, which doesn't give Cosset the bonuses. So Cosset, who's
that's actually a really good point.
Damage output models that you can take, doesn't maximize her damage output because of the...
Which means she's probably not one activation killing shit.
Yeah, so, I mean, I like it from the standpoint of Scalpel, Cosset, and Ghast, but then if you're going to include Cosset, then you need to include Dirge, which means
you can't bring Graves 2.
Graves 2. And then the other problem is, you're taking Mist, and what the hell is the point of having Mist if you're going to be taking this
knockout
melee list? So, it's kind of... I feel like what somebody's done with this list is they've randomly put together models that they like as opposed to creating the greatest synergy of list.
Okay. So, Chris, do you think Scalpel gained any strength with the new OPD? Are we going to start seeing Scalpel more?
Because you can know whether or not you're...
Yeah, you know if you're kicking or receiving.
I don't really think we're going to see a big difference with that. And the reason why I don't think we'll see a big difference with that is I think that more experienced players are going to greatly lean toward Obelisk no matter what.
Yeah.
And less experienced players are going to lean towards Scalpel no matter what because of her straightforward playstyle. Now, I do think that it will impact the rest of the team as it relates to whether or not you're going to take more of a melee list or scoring list, but that doesn't have as big an impact compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, I think you might see more people bring her, but like we saw in the interview we just did with Bill, there's a lot of people that are just like, yeah, I like Scalpel, but if I go to a tournament, I'm running Obulus.
Yeah, I think that's the answer for a top player.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the answer for a less experienced player.
Okay.
I think that Obelisk is the more difficult of the two to master.
So is there a matchup you think Scalpel has an advantage? Like what's a guild or team that you're like, yeah, Scalpel could mess that guild up?
I actually wouldn't. See, and I'd need to think through it. I'm not a Morts player, but maybe we should have asked Bill this, but I think...
Well, we asked Bill, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to drop Obulus no matter what.
Yeah, but I would imagine that Scalpel might be a little bit better into, like, the Hunters.
Yeah, he said things with, like, armor, he likes Scalpel, but not, like, heavy armor. So, like, if you're looking at Brewers, I think he'd be okay with that. Something that where you see, like, a decent amount of armor.
I just kind of think about the control elements.
Yeah.
And she might be able to slice through a control team, whereas I could imagine you playing a Theron versus Obelisk list and having a boring as hell game where both teams are playing control. That might be the answer, but like I said, take that with a grain of salt because I don't claim to be some Morts player that knows what he's doing. Although I do have all the models. So.
You do. And the last thing I kind of want to go with the question of is, we talked a little bit about this with Bill, but I want to reiterate it just because this is the last thing I want to talk about with Morts is when you look at Morticians and you have a new player that likes the look of them, what would you say to a new player that picks up Morticians?
Try something else first.
Okay, why do you say that?
Because you need to know all of the guilds to know how to activate your Morticians correctly.
I'm going to say, I think we both agree with this. We both played Morticians a little bit. Like enough to be mediocre at it at least.
Enough to, I think we both played Morticians enough to where if we pick them up and we're playing against an average player, we have a good chance.
And I'm going to say this though, I've played probably a half dozen games with Morticians, and even I still find Obulus challenging to use sometimes. Like, I look at my options and you really got to change your mindset to use them effectively. And it's one of those things where you got to get practice with them like a bunch because there's so many little tricks you can use with Obulus that it really does take a lot of setup and practice.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's probably the most difficult captain to master.
Yeah, but I think when you do master him, it's like, holy cow, Pandora's box has been opened.
I don't know. It's not like we're seeing a whole bunch of people take the Morticians and just run through tournaments either, though.
Yeah, that's true.
So they kind of have that element like we've talked about with the farmers where that's a guild for an expert player.
Yeah.
But they definitely don't have that OP nature that the farmers do to benefit from that. So you're only really going to see really skilled players do well with them in tournament. But I don't feel like their advantages are so great they're likely to win tournament after tournament against top-level players, just because there's other guilds that I think are a little bit stronger.
So if you are playing against somebody who has Morticians, so let's say that you're just at the store and you get a casual game in, right? Or even at a tournament, maybe you draw this, and all of a sudden you see Morticians are dropped across the table. If I have not played against Morticians before, what are some things I need to look out for? Because I think people that don't play Morticians should at least, there's a couple things they need to know about.
You need to know with Gasp and Casket and Obelisk, you need to know their defensive gotchas, which are Fear and Rising Anger for Gas.
Okay.
You need to know that Casket is going to have Reanimate.
Okay.
And you need to know that Obelisk is going to have Unpredictable.
Okay.
And Obelisk is really difficult with that because he's a 2-inch reach model and he has unpredictable movement.
And he has Shadow Light.
And that's very uncommon.
So you're like, oh, I got him locked down in combat, and then he Shadow Lights out.
Yeah, so that's a tough go.
I think with Casket, you also have to be aware of Casket Time. And you have to be aware of the Ghostly Visage. And you need to be...
Wait, how did you say that word?
Visage. I heard a British guy say it that way.
Oh, how classy of you.
I know. I think you need to be aware of those because if they put the Ghostly Visage out...
Wow.
Then...
Hey, it's just so embarrassing to say it like that.
It's the Ghostly Visage.
Wow.
That's so
it sounds
weird.
like you're trying to like molest me with your words.
Because if he puts that down, all of a sudden you can't charge into him, basically.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem.
And then he also has heavy burden, so you can start slapping that on players. And then, if God forbid you get thrown in the box, then it's just a bad day. So
well, and that's the other thing. If you don't know Morts and Casket throws a captain in the box, you
Good
are
night.
fucked.
Good night.
Like, there is no... If a Morts player pulls that off, there's no reason why that Morts player shouldn't win that game. Like, that should be
game over.
You can call it right there. There is... I don't know who the
You can
Morts
start
player,
doing your victory laps around the table, high-fiving.
Yeah. So, that would create a real negative play experience for a lot of people.
I would say another thing to look out for is Lure and Puppet Master, because that can make you jog to their team. And an easy way to counter that's 2 ways. One, if you hide behind a wall, they can't make you jog over that. So hiding behind walls is a good way. Another way you can avoid it is if you put all your models with interlocking melees. So I did this with Chris when he was playing Siren, is he tried to lure one of my models away, but I had Grange next to a model, and when they become a friendly model and they jog away, if they leave your melee zone, you get a Parting Blow. So I just Parting Blow, knock them down, and that avoids them from getting sucked into his team. So those are 2 ways to kind of get around the Lure and the Puppet Master, is just to interlock your melees or hide behind a wall. I think that's something else you need to make sure you look out for. Also, do not let Cosset and the bird get on the same target.
Yeah, and I would also recommend, in relation to that Cosset element, is you need to just take her out. She is a glass cannon, so she's going to be relatively easy to take out, but she can do a lot of harm to you if you allow her to stay alive.
Okay, so just a couple notes before we end this podcast. Just looking at, the only news we have really is Old Jake's How's That Tournament's April 7th. We're trying to get as many people out to that. We already have, I think, 32 people have already paid, which is freaking awesome. So good job, everybody that's already signed up. If you're planning on going and haven't signed up yet on Tiebreak, please, 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 please do that. Because the more people we get signed up on Tiebreak, the more sponsors we get. And I have been talking with Jake behind the scenes, because Jake's the one running this tournament. And he has showed me some of the prize support he already has lined up. And it is pretty freaking sweet. I can't share yet the details to that.
Are they like handing out hand jobs or something?
Well, let me tell you what. It would make some people blush with what's going on behind the scenes.
Oh, okay.
So, but there's awesome prize support. It's going to be a big tournament. We're trying to get it up to 50 people.
Yep. And I think also the Spring Fling we want to see be a huge tournament too.
Oh yeah. So
we're going to get great prize support out there.
Yeah, with everything we just talked with Bill about, it's going to be a pretty amazing tournament.
Yeah.
But yeah, just get signed up for that on Tiebreak. Try to peer pressure some people to going.
Yeah, I know I got peer pressured a lot.
We did. Hell yeah, we did.
Take care, fellas. Go roll dice. Throw salt. We'll see you next time.